Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra. What does that mean? Well, last week it meant a massive conflict of Star Trek's not perfect. But this week it's my illustration of how there are a lot of good elements to it. Now, yes, last week I did sort of say, well, you know, there's still lying and cheating and stealing and all those kind of things. There's an annotation there. Click it. It'll open up in a new tab or window. I'll pause. You can come back. If you're a bit weird and want to watch the good before the bad, do that too. But carrying on. So, yes, Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra. Anyone who's seen the wonderful episode Darmok knows what I mean, with the great Paul Winfield in a wonderful guest role. But that was, I mean, I only vaguely remember watching that when I was growing up. Bearing in mind, I was probably not even in my teens, really, by that point. I don't think I was. I don't think I was even 10 yet. You know, and it was around, so I watched that, and I think maybe that led to my love of linguistics, because it's great how the idea of this society that does everything in analogies, if you will, or metaphor, as they say it in the episode, but it's a little more complex than that. I'm not, you know, a professional linguist, as it were, so I can't give all the ins and outs, but someone has analysed it and sort of said more what it's like. And this idea that they speak only in references to things that have already happened, occasionally making new ones. You know, and I find that amazing, this idea that with a universal translator, they can get, like, you know, words like and, the, all those kind of in-between words, if you will. But of course the proper nouns aren't going to be translated. Whereas you and I can talk like this and you can understand because there's no actual proper nouns here. Whereas, in their language, I wouldn't have said that. There'd be so many pronouns that you wouldn't know what those pronouns meant without foreknowledge. And the fact that Picard is able to break it down, work it out, and then even communicate with their with the ship that these aliens are on afterwards, you know, and after Paul Winfield's character dies on the planet, and gets them to understand that an understanding has been reached, but unfortunately your captain is dead. You know, it's beautiful, and it amazes me. There is the wonderful episode of, I believe it's called The Outsider, where there is a race of gender-neutral people, really, for want of a better word. I don't like alien in a way. So for people, and they are, as I say, gender-neutral. They're not assigned any genders or anything like that. And of course, you know, various members of the, particularly Riker, the Enterprise crew are confused by this and, you know, sort of get to understand it. And then one of them wants to actually come out as female. It does occasionally happen where they will feel a particular leaning one way or the other, which they see as primitive, and they've evolved past that point. Now, for me, as someone who identifies as sort of gender neutral, I'm happy to fit into either camp, if you will. I found it a very interesting episode, you know, of trying to, like, someone being forced into something that they didn't feel like, but the opposite way around, I guess. You know, someone who wants to be female, but is neutral, being forced back into that neutrality. It's, you know, it's kind of heartbreaking to watch, and particularly at the end. I mean, this is a very old series, and I don't think I need to say spoiler alert here, but, you know, she's, I don't know, brainwashed back into neutrality, which kind of reminded me as well of these supposed, you know, straight camps for gays and things like that. You know, the fact that this stuff still goes on, but the feeling and the fact that Riker really wanted to bend the Prime Directive. It was one of my problems with the last episode, and it's kind of a problem here, but I still find the beauty that Riker could accept this and understand it. You know, the fact that, yes, okay, in Starfleet, you are looked after. And it's very sensible. Really, it's a very sensible society. You serve in arguably a kind of military / exploration kind of body, and you know, you have your sort of replicator credits and things like that, and you're given downtime. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. You know, as long as you are a valuable member of society, you're getting looked after. And whilst last week I did mention all those bad things that still happen, they're on the fringes, and sometimes they're choosing that life. Perhaps I didn't mention that last week because it still exists and they try to pretend that it doesn't. That was the main problem. But the fact is, they're the people who've rebelled against this. And okay, I'm not a big military kind of guy. However, in the Star Trek world, there does seem to be more than just you have to be military. There's civilian roles alongside that you can fulfill. I mean, they appreciate the arts. You can tell this in a number of scenes across all series, really. They still appreciate the arts, music and actual art, poetry. Everything is rewarded and enjoyed properly, and they respect that. I mentioned, obviously, last episode with Data, particularly, the fact that he was, as part of one of Picard's great moments, he was gifted, if you will, through his actions, the same rights and privileges that any sentient being in the Federation is allowed. That's great, because he is sentient. He clearly is autonomous and thinking and kind of feeling within a limited range until Star Trek Generations, when, of course, he had the emotion chip put in. And, the fact that he was given this freedom and then later on sort of, had his own offspring to a degree, which was very touching. But he was given a chastising, which makes sense. Again, he's done something that the captain would have liked to at least been informed of, but he can't force him to terminate his daughter, if you will, because that's a life. And he respects that. And this respect for life, that's the key bit. And whilst it did form part of the problems of last week, like I say, the fact that sometimes they won't break the rules, the times they do, and the times that lives are enriched and saved, do outweigh. I do have to say that, really. They do tend to outweigh the lives that are endangered or even ended because of either action or inaction on their part. And it's a beautiful model, and Gene Roddenberry had some great ideas of how society could go. The fact that race, ethnicity, I suppose, kind of part of that, upbringing, I suppose intelligence really is a factor, because you're not going to be able to do much if you haven't got the brain power. But, the medical advances they've got, the fact that people can live for many, many years and you can have frequent replacements of your body parts if you so wish. The rights that they are willing to extend to people to just be allowed to exist. And all they ask in return is that you don't just sit around doing nothing. Do something useful. Whether that usefulness is serving in the military, being an artist, or whatever skill set you have, use it. That's a beautiful world. That's the world we should have now. And this is something Gene Roddenberry dreamed up over 50 years ago, and we're not there yet. That's not a good thing. We've got a lot of work to do. I mean, okay, yeah, they're in like the 24th century, so we've got a lot of time. But I think we could do with stepping it up a little. I mean, we're getting nearer to the point where Zefram Cochrane's meant to take his first warp flight. I don't see that happening, unfortunately, on time. I can't remember the exact date. But, I don't think we're going to get there at this rate, and it saddens me. So, I think really, the overall thing really of the past 2 weeks is, it's got its bad points. And they shouldn't be glossed over as much as they try to. But for the most part, it's a beautiful model of an almost perfect society. And that's worth aspiring to. So, do what you can with your life. Make the change you can. There's the line that is often attributed to Gandhi, correctly or incorrectly: be the change you want to see in the world. And I can't say anything more than that, really. That's the best summation. Because if we all did that, then that utopian ideal, it's achievable. So think on that. And until next time, take care.